Sandy had rented a car big enough for the three of us and our luggage. As I left my room and my balcony, I felt a sudden pang of homesickness for this place where I had been for only a few days. Sandy came to my room to see if I needed anything. Set? I think so. The flowers are pretty well wilted, but I've put the rest of the fruit in a plastic bag. I thought we might want it while we're driving. Good thought. He sat down on the sofa. I talked with your parents last night. Sandy and Dennis must have astronomical phone bells, but still I was surprised. Everyone's fine, and I gave them a good report on you. They haven't heard from you yet. It's too soon. I've written every day, at least a postcard. They're aware that mail takes at least a week or 10 days. Should I have phoned when you could talk with them? I shook my head slowly, and I talked with Ursula and Max. We could call again if you like, so you could talk. I shook my head again, bent to pick up my shoulder bag. Max is weaker, Urs says, and in a good bit of pain. It was more a question than a statement. I slung the bag over my shoulder. We'd had all the big conversations on Beneseed. I had nothing to add. Sandy went to the door. Someone will be up for your bag in a moment. We'll meet you in the lobby. His voice was even, not condemning, not judging. Okay, I sat down to wait. I didn't want to leave. I wanted to be going somewhere with Zachary. I'd been devastated when Sandy and Rhea were not at the airport to meet me. Now I'd be delighted if they were delayed for another week. A knock on my door. Time to go. Rhea insisted that I sit in front with Sandy since she was so familiar with the countryside. I told them what Zachary and I had done, where we'd gone, and they approved. It wasn't very thorough. 1 hour in the museum, and I'll have to go back to Delphi and Osius Lucas. It's also overwhelming. There's far more than I can manage to see in a week. And you don't want to get saturated, Sandy said. Just a sip here, a taste fair, and you'll know what you want to drink of more deeply the next time. And there'll be a next time, Polly. Maybe not for the next few years, but you have travel in your blood, and Greece will draw you back. Now, my loves, my plan for today is this. We'll stop in Corinth for lunch and a little sightseeing, and go on to Nauplian for the night. Then tomorrow we'll push on to Epidaurus. We'll spend a good part of the day there, and then we'll have to head back to Athens to get you on your plane to Cyprus. We'll stick to a fairly easy pace, Rhea added. Sandy and I are in the mood to putter along, enjoy things without pressure, all right? Fine. Absolutely anything's fine. Charleston is the farthest I've been from Beneseed in years, and I've missed Europe. Rhea leaned over the seat. Have you read Robinson Jefferson's play about Medea? Max had me read it, along with a lot of she listens, Sophocles. How did you get along with all that classicism? With Max's help, pretty well. I didn't want to talk about Max, but with Rhea and Sandy, it was impossible not to. Sandy and Rhea were much more thorough sightseers than Zachary. If we were to plummet Polly back thousands of years, Sandy said, Messenize the place. It was. As we drove steadily uphill, the sky clouded over, and as we approached Sinai, the wild gray of the sky seemed to go with a stark and ancient magnificence. Max had shown me her sketchbooks of Greece, but they hadn't prepared me for the reality. She'd taken me through a good bit of Sophocles, some of which I thought it was absolutely fantastic, and some of which was boring. And I knew that the Acropolis of Mycenae was the setting for his plays. We parked the car and walked through the stone gates at the top of the mountain. Sandy grasped my arm. Do you realize, Paul, that these are the gates through which Agamemnon and Orestes walked? Come on, I'll show you the place which is thought to be where Clytemnestra murdered Agamemnon in his bath. He read Sophocles differently after this. I reached for his hand. Why are human beings so violent? We can be tender too, he said, and we can laugh at ourselves. Didn't Max give you any comedies to read? I think we just didn't get to them. Perhaps you thought they were too bawdy, Rhea suggested. Sandy laughed. I doubt that. Max is committed to opening Polly's eyes. But Max's plans for the education of Polyhemia O'Keefe had been interrupted before he got to the comedies. In the Xenia and Nauplian, Sandy and Rhea had a large corner room facing the Bay of Argos. From their balcony, we could see a Venetian fortress. My room, next to theirs, overlooked the water, and the sound of wind and waves was the sound of home, but wilder, because here the sea beat against rock, not sand. But it was still the familiar music of waves, and I slept. I was in a small boat in the wide stretch of water between Coopertown and Bennetstein Island. The waves were high and the boat was rocking, but I wasn't afraid. I held a baby in my arms, a tiny little rosy thing, but it wasn't Rosie or any of my younger siblings. It had no clothes on, and I held it close to keep it warm. Above us, a seagull flew. And then something seemed to be hitting at the wooden sides of the boat, and I looked over to see what it was. And Sandy was knocking on my door in the Xenia and Nauplian and calling, "Wake up, sleepyhead. Come and have breakfast with Rhea and me on our balcony. Be right there," I called. But I dressed slowly, still partly in the dream, which had been strangely beautiful. Bending down to fasten my sandal strap, I remembered, with somewhat the same windswept clarity as in the dream, that last evening with Max, when we sat drinking lemonade before dinner and she had talked about her baby again. Her little girl had been born the same month that I had, and just the day before, though a lot of years earlier. Max's voice, as she said this, was cool and calm, with the barest hint of sadness. Birds were chirping sleepily in the oaks, and the rolling of the breakers was hushed. The air was heavy with humidity, and heat lightning flickered around us. But Max seemed relaxed, and the pain lines which were permanently etched in her forehead seemed less deep than usual, and her gray eyes were not shadowed. She put her hand gently over mine as she said that sometimes when one gives something up completely, as she'd given up the thought of ever having another child, then God gives one another chance, and God had done that for her and me. And she said that, said God. So that was what the dream was about, I thought, and perhaps it had come to me because I went to sleep with the sound of the sea in my ears. But why was I holding the baby? Dreams are messages, Max said, but don't get fatty about them. Take them seriously, but not earnestly. It can be a form of self-indulgence if you overdo it. Nettie came and refilled her glasses. I think Nettie was always delighted when Ursula was away, but Nettie also loved Max and knew that Max needed Ursula. When Nettie had withdrawn to the kitchen quarters, Max said, "Don't be sorry for me, Polly. I've had a good life. I'm not a great painter, but I'm a good one, and I've had more than my fair share of success. I have few regrets. Not many people can say that." We were silent for a while, listening to the evening sounds around us. A tiny lizard scattered up a scream. Summer insects were making their double-bass rumblings. "There isn't anything that happens that can't teach us something," she said. That can't be turned into something positive. One can't undo what's been done, but one can use it creatively. She looked at me and her eyes were sea silver. "I'm glad I had the experience of having a baby. I wouldn't undo it, have it not have happened. The only thing is to accept and let the scar heal. Scar tissue is the strongest tissue in the body. Did you know that?" "No, so I shouldn't be surprised if it's the strongest part of the soul. Perhaps, when the ice thawed, the scars of my soul would heal. But had Max's?" Once again, I thought of the portrait of her father, of the smile on his face, which gave me chills. Did healed scars ever break open again? Get adhesions? Could one get adhesions on the soul? I fastened the second sandal strap and went to join Sandy and Rhea on their balcony, where wind from the sea blew the white tablecloths so that it flapped like a sail. The theater in Epidaurus was impressive, all right. Great stone seats built into the mountain. It must have seated tens of thousands. Rhea and I climbed to the top row to test the acoustics, and Sandy stood in the center of the stage and recited the Walrus of the Carpenter. We thought we were the only people there, till a group of kids rose up from the seats and began applauding. They drifted off, and Rhea and I climbed down and took the stage. She recited a passage from Antigone in Greek, which made me shiver. I didn't understand more than a few words, but the Greek rolled out in glorious syllables. Your turn, Polly, she said. Uncle Sandy called down, do one of your speeches from As You Like It. Oh, do, Rhea urged. We were so sorry we couldn't be there for the performance. Only one performance for all that work. It was worth it, I said. Okay, here goes. I stepped to the exact center of the stage where the acoustics were supposed to be perfect. I chose a speech early in the play where Rosalind is about to be banished by Celia's father, who is just about as nasty as Max's father. But Celia stands up to him, defending Rosalind. She reminds him that after he had taken the dukedom and banished Rosalind's father, I did not then entreat to have her stay. It was your pleasure and your own remorse. I was too young that time to value her, but now I know her. If she be a traitor, why so am I. We still have slept together, and wheresoe'er we went, like Juno's swans, still we went coupled and inseparable. Sandy and Rhea applauded, and Rhea said, that was superb, Polly. If I'm ever in need of a defender, I'll take you. Sandy said, the Elizabethans understood friendship. This, pusillanimous age seems afraid of it. You can have, sex with someone without commitment, but not friendship. You were excellent, Paul. Have you thought of acting as a career? I've thought of it. Max says I read aloud well, but I doubt if I had a dream of making it on Broadway or even at the Dock Street. You made friendship real again. Did any of the kids misinterpret? Of course. The Mulliville girls. Miss Olowski talked about affluence going along with intellectual deprivation. I think she was pretty upset that it was the kids with affluent backgrounds who made the nastiest cracks. I did not add that the cracks were particularly nasty because of Max, but they never actually mentioned her name. In a world where pleasure rules, people tend to be underdeveloped in every other way. Your Miss Olowski sounds like a good teacher. She is, I said, though it took me a while to realize it. Let's go on to the sacred precincts, Sandy suggested. There's a lesson in compassion. It's a sort of BC Lourdes, Rhea explained, dedicated to the god Esculapius. I gave Polly a book about it. Sandy galloped down the high marble stairs as agilely as Zam. When we got to the sacred precincts, we stopped talking. We saw dormitories for sick people, saw the special baths in which they were given healing waters. In the museum, we saw ancient surgical instruments, and Sandy remarked that some of them were like those in Dennis's office. When we left the museum, he said, they knew a lot about psychology, those old Greeks. One of their medicines for healing was comedy. The patients sat just where we were, and on the stage, the best actors of the day played comedies, Euripides, and other less well-known playwrights. They were exceedingly bawdy. Shakespeare would have been right at home, and exceedingly funny, and laughter does have healing qualities. Miss Olowski said that Shakespeare was bawdy, but never dirty. True, Rhea nodded. The Greeks were way ahead of the present world in many ways. I'm proud of my ancestry. I thought I saw Stanley give her a look, a signal. She went on, I'm rather tired and I think I'll just sit and rest for half an hour. Then it'll be time for lunch. You two go on. You all right? Sandy sounded concerned, so maybe it wasn't a signal after all. I take longer to get over jet lag than you do. I'm fine, and I'll be famished for lunch. Okay, Paul? Sandy asked. Sure. We wandered around the path together. I was glad there weren't many other tourists that morning because the ancient stones, even the air we breathed, filled me with awe. We stood near the side of the snake pit. You read the book about Doris I gave you? Sandy asked. I finished it last night. A patient couldn't get through the outer gates until all bitterness and self-pity and anger were gone. The belief was that healing was impossible until the spirit was cleansed. I think you're better, Polly, but not all the way. Am I right? I nodded. What are you holding on to? Why can't you let go? I turned away from him. He followed me. Zachary said, I put a hard shell around myself. That's more perspicacious than I given him credit for. Hardness doesn't become you. I know. I'm not asking you to forget, Polly, because you're never going to forget. What you have to do is remember with compassion and forgive. My voice trembled. Uncle Sandy, I don't like having a piece of ice stuck in my heart. It hurts. Sit here in the sun, he said, and let it thaw. I'll be back for you in a few minutes. I'm going to see how Ria's doing. He was leaving me for Ria just as Ursula had left me. Stop it, Polyhymnia O'Cave. That's plain self-pity. Self-indulgent self-pity. None of that. I sat where Sandy had left me at an uncomfortable stone bench. I closed my eyes, and a vision of the dream from the night before came back to me, unbidden. I was in the boat, protecting the baby, and the seagull flew over us. And the seagull was Max. Ursula had called Daddy to tell him she was going to Charleston for one last consultation with Dr. Ormsby and asked if I could go over to Beaulair to stay with Max. Nettie and Ovid roamed over the garage, and it was not a good idea for Max to be completely alone. Ursula would be back as early as possible on Saturday. Do you want to go? Daddy asked me. We were in the lab, and it was September hot. Sometimes it seemed September is the hottest month of all. Daddy wore shorts and a white t-shirt. I had on shorts too, and a halter top, and I just scrubbed down the floor and cleaned my tanks. Max shouldn't be alone. I looked at him. I talked with him about Max, and he treated me as an intelligent adult. I didn't want him to treat me as a child now. He didn't. I've talked with Dr. Netson, and he doesn't expect any radical problem in the immediate future. But this disease is unpredictable, so if Max should show any kind of alarming symptoms, call him at once, or call Rennie. And of course, call me. Okay, but you don't think they're well? No, Paul, I don't think so. Your mother and I are very fond of Max and Ursula, and I'm glad we can help, even a little. Max has given you a lot, and self-confidence, particularly. Daddy was sitting in an old leather chair that was too battered, even for our house. I perched on the sagging arm. Daddy, people are so complicated. That hasn't just occurred to you, has it, Paul? No, but Max and Ursula seem particularly complicated. In a way, they are. But you know, I prefer their kind of complications to some of the cocktail partying, wife swapping, promiscuous lives of some of the people in Coopertown and Mulletville. Yes, many of them are on third or fourth marriages. Love has to be worked at, and that's not popular nowadays. I'm glad you and Mother don't worry about being popular. We do work at our marriage, and it's worth it. And I'm glad you trust me, I said. Over the years, you've proven yourself to be trustworthy. I hope I'll never let you down. He pulled me onto his knees. You will, he said gently. It's human nature. We don't let each other down. I may be putting too much responsibility on you and allowing you to go over to Beaulair to stay with a very ill woman. I want to go. I know you do, and I'm glad you do. Your mother and I have always given you a great deal of responsibility, and you're a very capable young woman. Just remember, call me if there's even the slightest sense of emergency. All right, but I didn't get a chance to call. On Friday, I piloted everybody home in the boat, then packed my overnight bag. Mother was going to drive me to Beaulair because Daddy has some kind of meeting to go to and would need a Land Rover. Just call on Saturday morning when you're ready and I'll be over. Urs said she might be able to bring me home, whichever. Just remember, it's no trouble for me. She dropped me outside the house, waited till Ovid opened the door, waved, and drove off. Ovid led me through the house and onto the back veranda. The ceiling fans were whirring, but the air was oppressive. Max held out her hands in greeting. Heavy electrical storms forecast with possible damaging winds. I lost a great oak in the last storm, and I don't want to lose any more. Nettie has fixed a cold meal for us and left it in the fridge. She and Ovid feel the heat, and I told them to take the evening off. We'll leave the dishes in the sink, and they'll take care of them in the morning. We watch Ovid retreat toward the kitchen, a slight figure in his dark pants and white coat and cottony hair. Then I regarded Max and was grateful that the pain lines were not deep. Ovid came back in to refill a pitcher of lemonade, then said goodnight to us and left. I wondered if he and Nettie knew how ill Max really was. She took a long drink and put her glass down. Do you believe in the soul, Polly? Max never hesitated to ask cosmic questions out of the blue. Yes, I thought maybe she'd turn her scorn on me, but she didn't. So what is it? This thing called soul. The scarred thing full of adhesions. It's your you and my me. What do you mean by that? It's what makes us, different from anybody else in the world. Like snowflakes? You've seen snow, haven't you? Yes, of course you have. Although trillions of snowflakes, each one different from the other? More than snowflakes, the soul isn't ephemeral. A separate entity from the body? I shook my head. I think it's part. It's the part that, well, in your painting of the harbor at Rio, it's the part which made you know what paint to use, which brush, how to make it alive. Max looked at the silver pitcher sparkling with drops as though it were a crystal ball. So it's us, at our highest and least self-conscious. That's sort of what I mean. The amazing thing is that one soul, or whatever one calls it, is strongest when one is least aware. That's when the soul is most aware. We get in our way, and that diminishes our souls. She pushed up from her chair and headed toward the table, which was already set with silver and china. Be an angel and bring the food out to the veranda. We ate comfortably together. Max had a book with her and began leafing through it, looking for something. As the passage on our conversation reminds me of, what? Upanishads, a series of Sanskrit words which are part of the Veda. Here it is, Paul. Listen. In this body, in this town of spirit, there is a little house shaped like a lotus, and in that house there's a little space. There is as much in that little space within the heart as there is in the whole world outside. Maybe that little space is the reality of your you and my me? Could I copy that? I asked. Of course. I've been watching that little space within your heart enlarging all year as more and more ideas are absorbed into it. Some people close their doors and lock them so that nothing can come in, and the space cannot hold anything as long as the heart clutches in self-protection or lust or greed. But if we're not afraid, that little space can be so large that one could put a whole universe in it and still have room for more. She stopped and her hand went up and pressed against her chest, and I could see pain dimming the silver in her eyes. Give me some more whiskey, quickly. I ran into the house and into the dining room, turning on the lights. The Waterford chandelier sparkled into bloom. I hurried to the sideboard and got a decanter of bourbon with a silver label, turned out the light, ran back to the veranda, and poured Max a good tot. She drank it in a gulp so quickly that she almost choked, then sighed and put the glass down. It works, and quickly. I'm sorry, Paul. I don't like you to see me in pain. I reached across the glass top of the table and put my hand on hers. It was hot and dry. Mine was cold. Don't be afraid, little one. I'm all right. Those episodes are bad, but they don't last. She reached for the decanter and poured herself some more. You sure I shouldn't call? Polly, I'm all right. There's nothing anyone can do. Don't fret. The pain's much better. I took her plates out to the kitchen, rinsed them, and left them in the sink for Nettie and Ovid. I thought that maybe I should try to call Daddy, and then decide that it would make her angry. When I got back to the veranda, dark was falling. The long evenings of summer were behind us. Night was closing in early, though the shadows of evening still held the humid heat of the day. Max was leaning back in her chair, and there was just enough light for me to see that the look of pain had eased. She took a sip of bourbon and put her glass down. It leaves me tired, she said. Let's sit here for a while and watch the stars. I sat across from her, glancing at the unlit candles in their hurricane globes. Do you want any light? No, even candle flames add to the heat. Look, there's a star. The wind was rising, but it was not a cooling wind. The gentle whirring of the paddle fan, the slow rolling of the waves across the sand, the chirring of locusts were hot summer sounds. A seagull screamed. Another star, Max said. All the galaxies, the billions of galaxies, the possibility of billions of island universes, floating like bubbles in a great spacious sea. There's the Big Dipper, I said, relaxing a little. The Great Bear, Max said. I talk about the unimportance of size, the microcosm as immense as the macrocosm, but then I think of Baudelaire sitting on a small island on an insignificant planet. How can God keep track of it all? Do you think God really does count the hairs on our heads? Yes. Why? I don't know why. It's just what I think. At least you don't give me glib answers. If human beings can't program computers to count astronomical figures, why should God do less? If there isn't a God who cares about our living and dying, then it's all an echoing joke. I don't want my life to be a bad joke, so I had to believe that God does care. That there's a someone who began everything and who loves and cares. She shivered. Funny, how intense heat can make one break out in goose flesh, just like cold. Let's go to my room. It's cooler there. Why don't you get ready for bed, and I will too. We paused on the landing, as always, to look at the statue of the laughing Christ. The light touched the joyous face, and there was compassion in the eyes. While I was changing in the green guest room, thunder began to rumble in the distance. The air was so thick with humidity you could squeeze it. The sky flickered faintly with electricity. Max's nightgown was ivory satin, so lovely it could have been worn as an evening dress. She sat on the white rug, her hands about her knees. A Chinese screen was in front of the fireplace, gold background with flowers and herons painted on it. You've grown over the summer, Max said. You're going to be tall. My old seersucker nightgown was too short. Not too tall, I hope. You come from a tall family, and you carry it well. Don't ever slump. That just makes one look taller. Hold your head high like royalty. The light from one of the lamps glinted off the decanter of bourbon and onto Max's glass, half full of amber liquid. I hoped that she knew how much she should drink, but I noticed a bottle of champagne. I really don't need anything, I said awkwardly. There's more lemonade if I get thirsty. I've already uncorked the champagne, Max said. Hold on your glass. I picked up the tall fluted glass which was on the hearth in front of the Chinese screen, held it out, and she poured. I thought her hand was a little unsteady, and I was concerned. Why should I worry about that decanter of bourbon, or that maybe Max was drinking too much? If she was dying and it eased the pain, what difference did it make? But it did. It did make a difference. This was not the Max I knew, but Max who made me believe there were wide worlds open for Polyhymnia O'Keefe. Thunder again. Low. Menacing. To you, Max said, her voice slurring. To all that you can be. Some of her whiskey spilled on the rug. I wanted to throw it at the Chinese screen. This could not be Max, this woman with her hand clutching the decanter of bourbon. She poured herself more. Her eyes were too bright, her cheeks too flushed. Lightning flashed again, brightening the flowers on the screen. That's too close, Max said as the thunder rose. We could hear the wind whipping the trees. I'm afraid, oh little one, I'm so afraid. Not of the thunderstorm, afraid of the dark, afraid of nothingness, of being alone, of not being. This was naked, primordial fear. I wanted to call Daddy, but what would I say? Max is drinking too much and she's afraid of dying? Lightning again, but this time there were several seconds before the thunder. Are you afraid? Max whispered. No, I don't mind thunderstorms as long as I'm not alone. A slow wave of thunder rolled over her response. I needed her words slurred, an affirmation of being. She picked up her glass. I glanced at the decanter and saw that it was half empty. Oh, Max, I wailed silently. I wish you wouldn't. She bent toward me, whispering, Oh, my little Polly, it's all so short, no more than the blink of an eye. Why are you afraid of Max? Why? Her breath was heavy with whiskey. Her words were thick. I was afraid. I didn't know what to do, how to stop her, how to make her be Max again. In the next flash of lightning, she stood up, and in the long satin gown she seemed 7 feet tall, and she was swaying, so drunk she couldn't walk, and then she fell. I rolled out of the way. She reached for me, and she was sobbing. I scrambled to my feet, ran. I heard her coming after me. I turned up the landing, rushed down the stairs, heard her unsteady feet, then a crash, then turned to see that she had knocked over the statue. I ran on, panting, past the dining room, slipped in my bare feet on the polished floor, and almost fell. I reached out to steady myself, and my hand hit the light switch, and the crystal chandelier bloomed with light, and the light touched the smile on the face of the portrait of Max's father. "Pa!" she screamed out, staggering toward me, carrying the statue. "Darn you! Darn you! I'm just like you, darn you!" I pushed open the heavy front door and burst out into the pelting rain. I ran up the long drive, hardly realizing I had on only my nightgown. The crushed shells hurt my feet, but did not slow me down. My nightgown was drenched and clung to my body. I felt a sharp pain in my foot. Rain streamed from my hair and into my eyes, so that the headlights of an approaching car were nearly on me before I saw them, and heard the shells crunching under the tires, and veered to the side of the road. Brakes were slammed on. The car stopped. A window was opened and someone looked out. "Polly!" It was Ursula. "Someone told me." She flung open the door. "Get in, child." Ursula would take care of everything. I stumbled into the car. "Child, what happened?" "Max is drunk." "Oh, she's drunk," and I got away from her and ran. She ran after me. She knocked over the statue of the laughing, and the light came on and hit the portrait of her father, and I babbled on, hardly knowing what I was saying. "Oh, Max," Ursula said. "Oh, Max." She started the car again and drove up to the house. "Wait here, child." She ran indoors. I heard her calling, "Max! Max, dear, it's Urs. Where are you?" And the door slammed on her words.